Welcome back to the special edition of Your Bottom Line, Understanding Open Enrollment. CNN senior medical correspondent Elizabeth Cohen and SiriusXM Dr. Radio's Andrew Rubin they're both here to help us with our questions. And we want to get right to the telephones. The first question comes from David in Georgia. David, what is your question?
Yes, my question is, being a single parent, which would be the best option to take, the HMO or the PPO?
HMO, PPO, we were just talking about this a second ago, Elizabeth. What do you think for David?
Well, I think David needs to think about what are his medical needs and how much money does he earn. If he's really, David, if you're really in a financial struggle right now, then you might want to think about an HMO. It's going to be less expensive. If you have lots of health needs, for example, God forbid if you or your child have a type of unusual disease, you might want to think about a PPO because you might want to go outside of your own network in order to get specialized care. So it has to do with how much money you have and what kind of health needs you have.
Obviously, the devil's in the details here as we start to look at these questions. I want to go to one of the email questions. Stephen in Florida is asking us, if you have co-insurance, what is the bill? What's my tab based on? So, Andrew, answer that for us. How do they calculate co-insurance? How does it work?
That is a great question, and you have to know there's two components of co-insurance. One is if you're in network, and one is if you're out of network. And first I want to say if you go out of network, it's really expensive because the co-insurance is calculated on the physician's charge, which is usually a very high number. If you're staying within network and you have co-insurance, your co-insurance is going to be based on what the insurance company determines as the reasonable and customary charge of that service. It's sort of the in-network, if you will, contracted rate that the insurance company has with the doctor, and you pay your percentage share of that.
Your percentage share. Elizabeth, you want to chime in?
Yes, I think it's no secret. It's actually been on the internet that here the company we work for, Time Warner, is switching from paying, $15 to see your doctor to co-insurance, paying 20%. And so what I'm going to be doing in the next week or so is just calling my children's pediatrician and saying, what is 20% of an appointment with you? Because, as Andrew just said, it's unclear. There's the numerators there. It's a 20. You don't know what the denominator is. 20% of what? And so I think what you really have to do is call your doctors and say, I'm going to have to start paying you 20% of the bill. What does that come to?
Absolutely. And, 159 million of us are making these decisions right now. We want to hear from you, 866-792-3399. We have Estelle in Illinois. Estelle, what is your question? Estelle?
If you allow yourself, yes. Hello?
Go right ahead.
Okay. If you allow yourself to, if you're with an employer and you have their insurance and that company goes under or you lose your insurance, you're better off to have your own insurance, because if you get a pre-existing while you're with your employer and then you have to go back and get your own insurance, if you can afford it, they're not going to cover you. So I think you're better off to have your own insurance, like a co-insurance, and an insurance with your company.
Well, I see a lot of money out of pocket here, Andrew. What do you say?
Well, that's actually a great question, and there's unfortunately a technical answer like there is to most of healthcare. One is, I think if COBRA is an option in your employer's case, so if a company goes under or goes bankrupt, COBRA is not going to be an option for you. But if you have COBRA as an option and you work for a large employer, I think you're better staying with COBRA and taking advantage of the stimulus money where the government's paying 2/3 of your premium. The reason why is that if you go from a large group plan to an individual plan, you actually, under federal protections, can actually enroll in the individual market. But the key is you have to be going from a large group plan to an individual market. If you work for a small employer, that actually won't, that option's not available to you.
Yeah, there are real limits on COBRA. I want to go to the email question next. It's Maravik in Seattle, Washington. Is there, she asked, a good way to calculate how much to contribute to flexible spending? Those flexible spending accounts that Elizabeth just talked about. She says, I need some kind of formula since it seems I always underestimate what I end up spending in the year. And you know how this works, Elizabeth. If you don't spend it, you lose it.
Right, exactly. So you actually do want to underestimate by a little bit because you won't be getting that money back. But here's what you can do. Go to the site for the folks who manage your FSA. It'll have everything written down. Right next to everything, write down how much you spend. For example, it'll pay for contact lenses. How much do you pay for contact lenses a year? You should pretty much know that. You can always call your eye doctor or whatever and ask how much you spend. So write down, how much do you think you spend on parking? How much do you spend on co-pays or co-insurance? Write it all down, add it up, and then I would suggest sort of backing off just a little bit because, as Jerry said, if you don't spend it, you're just going to lose it. So I think that's sort of a good, it's basically crunching the numbers. It's a good rule of thumb.
I love that. Okay, let's get to the phones. Christine in North Carolina has a question. Christine.
Yes, hello. I saw you speaking about the FSA option, but we have an HSA plan, and it's a very high deductible. It's actually in a very low premium payment, and I'm wondering if that's a good option, something we should continue with, or maybe something more people should be taking advantage of.
Do you mean the high deductible plan, Christine?
Yes. 10 or
Okay.
15,000.
You know, that isn't something we've actually talked about yet. And Andrew, I want to turn to you. The high deductible plans, a lot of people are confused by these. Sometimes they're called consumer-driven health care plans. I'm not sure if that's a good name or not because it's a little misleading. Explain what they are and exactly why you might choose one of those.
Well, Jerry, you and I have talked about this before. You know I'm not a big fan of high deductible plans, but they do play an important role in this country because they are less expensive. And the reason they're less expensive is because you are paying the first dollars out of your medical costs up to a high deductible amount. And those deductible amounts can frequently be very expensive, very high numbers. So, you know, for people who don't have a lot of options, I think this is a great safety net out there. I think if you have options and you can afford to choose a different kind of plan with a lower deductible, you should do that. But the interesting piece here is the HSA, which is basically very similar to an FSA, but you can actually put money into it to pay for your costs up to a certain amount each year, tax-free, and that money actually does roll over, unlike an FSA where it doesn't roll over. And most of the expenses are similar to an FSA.
Elizabeth, do you want to chime in here?
That's right. You know what, Jerry, this is a little bit like going to Vegas. You might look at these HSA plans and say, this is great. I don't see the doctor a lot. This is cheap to start out with. But you don't know, God forbid, if you're going to get diagnosed with cancer or get hit by a car or something terrible, and then you could be really stuck with a lot of high bills. So it really depends in some ways how much of a risk taker you are. Some people like Vegas, some people don't.
And well, if you have kids, or let's say you have a condition already that you're being treated for, it's really a little risky to actually choose one of these plans. All right, we're going to talk more about that and a lot of other health issues. You know, we're just getting started. The point of today's show is to empower you with everything you need to know about open enrollment. Email me at jerry@cnn.com, or you can call us, as we've been saying, 866-792-3399. That's 866-792-3399. More answers to your questions next.